Thinking. Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to yet another week of Sports Community live streams from the Mornington Lockdown Office of Sports Community. I'm Steve Pallas, and joining me today is Mike Ronchi. Mike, welcome to the Sports Community live stream.
Good morning, Steve. How are you?
Cold. It's cold in Melbourne. There's no sport in Melbourne. We're locked down. What is the world's most livable city? Here we go.
Yes, I currently sit in my little bunker at home, isolated, which is a room of 4 walls of brick, so it's a little chilly. So forgive the cardigan. It's keeping me quite warm. It's my warmest outfit I have. So here we go.
Now, for many years, Mike, you've just finished with Cricket Victoria, but many years you were Cricket Victoria's member protection information officer, kind of dealing with the complaints that were coming in through to the peak bodies. So I'm really keen to have a discussion about over a number of weeks. I'm really excited about the discussion on complaints. But just to start the whole discussion, MPIO, we hear it, but we're not really sure what it is. So what is MPIO? What's an MPIO officer?
Okay. MPIO stands for Member Protection Officer. And it's a role, it's a fairly important role in as far as any organisation, whether you're state or just your local community club. It's a role that takes on the challenge of I guess listening to and dealing with complaints of numerous subjects and reasons that people feel aggrieved. The misconception that most people have of an MPIO is that person will solve the problem and go into solution mode. It's actually, the role is not that at all. The role of a member protection officer is to, I guess, be an ear, first of all, listen to the person and whatever they've got as a complaint or feeling aggrieved about. And the role essentially is to advise that person what their options are, what the protocols might be, and how to take that complaint forward. So a member protection information officer just rides along the person who has the complaint, who is always called the complainant in these issues. The complaint always stays with the complainant until they're satisfied that they've reached an outcome that they desired and where it should be. So it's not a role to go into problem solving or investigating or even making a decision. It's purely just to advise the complainant as to their options and where to go.
Cool. And we've got a number of people online, so good morning to you. Feel free to join the conversation. Feel free to just to say hello, just type a comment into the chat. Join the conversation, share your ideas, even bring up the types of complaints you've seen in your club. That'll be great. And we'll have that discussion because that's where we are. So in one regard, yes, you're the advisor and just making sure that procedural fairness is carried out. And but in the other side of the coin, you kind of get a grandstand seat to just watch the different types of complaints that will come through a different peak sporting body. So what were the different types of complaints that were coming through to the peak sporting body level?
Oh, look, many and varied. And being a state MPIO, you could just about turn it into a full-time job. There were lots of complaints coming in, and fortunately, an organisation like Cricket Victoria had 4 MPIOs appointed, so we were able to share the load. Look, it would come. Complaints that would come through would be from selection issues through to harassment, racial vilification, right through to issues around governance, I should say, where AGMs were run inappropriately. The whole gamut. Just some issues around personal relationships, which we won't go too far into. But look, It was many and varied, Steve. So it was just pretty much a line where anyone could pick up and just explain their complaint. Then you could go from there. Of course, we got a lot of fallouts of tribunals. They weren't happy with the decision, and they may not have been able to appeal. So people were just wanting to know what was their rights and what was the best way to tackle their issue that they were aggrieved about. But yeah, very, very, very varied. No real particular common theme coming through.
So selection, I'm just writing these down because we might tackle them one-on-one as we go through, and look for trips to tricks and methodologies that clubs can use or volunteers can use to de-escalate the issue, because effectively once it goes from the individual to the state body under the MPIO process or the member protection process, it's an escalated issue and it becomes more challenging to resolve. That would be a fair comment, wouldn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Every organisation must have a structure where they know they can handle these complaints and take them forward. There's nothing worse than a complainant just getting handballed around, and that just festers, and that can do some serious damage to clubs relationships. Yeah, it definitely needs a structure where you can turn to straight away and not let these things get out of hand.
Yeah. So I'll get you to take your Cricket Victoria or ex-Cricket Victoria MPIO hat off for a tick and put on your, 30 years of club administration hat and combine the two. So the selection issues, was it didn't get selected, did get selected, got selected in the wrong grade, got dropped? They're the sort of issues that we're seeing come through?
Yeah, things like that. Things like the captain has it in for me, and it's a personality thing as well. Many and varied again. Didn't have too many of the selection issues, but the first thing I'd advise any club, you must have a chairman of selectors who's a good communicator, and if you don't have a chairman of selectors, at least your captain or coach needs to be able to sit down with players and communicate the reasons being or their thinking. And like any relationship, communication's key across all facets of running an organisation and a club. So as we said before, if you've got the right structure and you've got a good person who's a good communicator who can sit down with players and parents as well. Let's not forget the parents. The parents get emotionally involved when their child is not getting selected, where their expectations are at. So that's a pretty important part of it all.
The role of, say, a selection policy then, is that important or is that bureaucracy?
Well, it's a sensitive subject, this one, because once you commit a selection policy, once you commit to publicly putting that out there, you're always going to be held to ransom at it. My own personal opinion on, and having been a president of a club, was to not so much have a selection policy, selection guidelines, because you need that little bit of flexibility every now and then to be able to select squads for multiple reasons why. I'm always a bit hesitant to lock into selection policy, but you can certainly put guidelines, and at the front of the season you can explain those guidelines to the playing group. You got to tread a fine line there on selection.
Yeah, because you can lock yourself into behaviours that you certainly didn't intend to happen, for sure.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yep.
So that concept of the coach or the selector's got it in for me, the preferential treatment,
yep,
the coach's pet scenario. Now, just to put it in context, across the board in sport, I would suggest that selection complaints are the number one complaint across the board, across sports. So how do we, coming up with some recommendations, because you're right. You've just come off being the president of a club for just a measly 14 years as a second stint as a club president. So, you know, how do we ensure that our environment doesn't create that scenario? And two parts of that question. And then if it's inadvertently happening, potentially it does happen subconsciously from the people involved. What's the role of the club or the committee to just ensure the well-being of the club, I guess?
Yeah, look, again, it comes down to just communication, Steve. I think the club's got to be fairly open and transparent in its communications as to why. With that individual, they don't have to, you know, I guess, explain publicly why they've made various selections. I think they just need to be, you need to be proactive as far as a selection committee. You know, again, I've just said selection committee. That's another important thing. We just don't have a selector at a club. You know, if you want a balanced way of selecting and deciding who's going to play where, to have a committee so you don't have to share the whole load to one individual is another important thing.
And they can potentially, where there is unconscious bias, and certainly where there's conscious bias, but where there is unconscious bias, they can then raise that and balance off that discussion, can't they?
Yeah, well, if you've got a committee, you know, 2 or 3 people can sit down with the individual involved rather than just one person, which takes away that one-on-one bias, if there is any. And I mean, that's the role of a chairman of selectors, isn't it? I mean, usually across most sports, it's the captain and coach that select their teams. And if it's a first grade team, that's where both coach and captain will get involved. If there's other teams below, maybe it might be just the captain of that team. So the role of a chairperson is very important then, because they can, the captain and coach in their selection can essentially deflect the responsibility of the communication to the chairman and selectors, who can, you know, give a more independent and unbiased view and take that bias away from the issue.
And so it's the same as everything. It's really good, strong process and good, strong communication. So kind of summarising, just we've dwelled today on just the selection, and we'll pull apart in future episodes. So what we'll do, Mike, if it's okay with you, we'll kind of call it complaints handling Monday, and we'll start to go on a journey of looking at the major causes of complaints within clubs, and then how do we just make sure they don't even occur, let alone deal with them. But in summarising, then have a really good understanding of the guidelines, the process of selecting, so selection committee, chairman of selectors. But really strongly is set the expectations about how selection before it happens with the players. And then communicate with those that are those that are affected afterwards.
Yeah.
Would it be fair to say that one of the big triggers that creates the issue, or is not the non-selection, but it's the lack of communication after the selection, and it's just the teams are put up on the wall, and then, you know, that's supposed to be the end of it?
Yeah. That's everything. Communication is everything. Being proactive, talking to players and parents before selection is known, but also, you know, making sure and clear. Maybe it's your induction day of the season when you've got parents in, that, you know, these are the guidelines, these are the expectations. You know, it shouldn't be too difficult to choose performance over, you know, friendship. And sometimes you get complaints that there's cliques in a club and they all stick together. It's those kind of things. So as a president, as a chairman, as a coach, as a captain, number one is your communication. Absolute number one is your communication. So get that right. Get your guidelines. other things like that lead, and we can talk about this at another session, other things that lead into complaints is about, lack of code of conduct, the way clubs react to anyone who's misbehaved or not approved appropriately. All that up front and clear and transparent is really important, and that comes under communication. So they're subjects we can talk about a little later.
Yeah, and yeah, absolutely. I think, and I really look forward to it. This is why I think it's a really valuable discussion over an extended period of time.
Yeah.
I was listening to Justin Langer speak on a recording he had with John Buchanan just this morning, actually, and he said that the discussion when a player hasn't made the team is the hardest, and often that's the reason that it's not had, because it's potentially a hard discussion. But the reality is not having that discussion, that respectful discussion, is actually the cause of so many of these things that escalate to be really challenging scenarios that could have been resolved with that the respect, the discussion prior to the information becoming public.
Yep. Yeah. Look, especially at that level where you're talking, someone's career and money that puts food on their table. They are massive, very confronting, and the human race doesn't naturally embrace confrontation. And you need to be very sympathetic and empathetic the way you approach it. So again, it comes down to good communication skills and just being able to respect the relationship, and take the personal stuff out of it. And as I said before, usually selections are based on performance. It can be fairly easy to just, list the performances or lack of to navigate your way through. But you've also got to understand that, people are emotionally affected by it. It's their pride. It's their, it's their whole purpose in some cases when it's your career. So it's very confronting and needs to be dealt with efficiently and promptly, because as you said before, it leads to a lot of festering and emotions. And if it's not treated appropriately and dealt with quickly, it can do some serious damage to not just the player and maybe the coach, but team morale, club morale. It can really quickly get away.
Yeah, we've seen clubs torn apart because of these sort of scenarios.
Yeah, you always hear of breakaway groups and players, and
Mike, we could talk for hours and hours, and effectively over the coming weeks, the combination of all these discussions we will, because it is actually a fascinating and interesting discussion to look at the complaints process, and then go back and look at how we can create processes that ensure or that minimize the chances of them occurring. So thank you very much for coming online. Thank you very much to those that have watched us today and listened to us today. Big week. We've got on Wednesday, we've got Doing Sport Differently Wednesday, brought to us by Vic Health, which we're really excited about. So this week we'll be talking with the Frankston Stingrays Hockey Club, and the benefit that social formats have brought to their club. Just really huge. Esport Friday. Thursday, we've got a country football coach, which Mike, I'm going to talk to him about selection and see how they handle selection and the challenges that comes through as well. So for you today, thank you for coming on. It's been a great to your knowledge and experience.
Look forward to doing it again.
Next week we will, Mike. And so to everyone else, thank you very much for watching. Tag your friends, tag your family, tag your club volunteers so they can join the conversation. But for now, thank you very much for being part of our sports community.